Captain Jake Morrison stood at the bridge window and watched the last transport ships leave New Dallas Colony. The red sun made the evacuation vessels look like drops of blood against the black space. Behind him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. Nobody spoke unless they had to. They all knew what was coming. The Zephyrians would arrive in 6 hours. Maybe less. Morrison had seen what the aliens did to colonies. The reports from the Outer Rim painted a clear picture. Zephyrians did not take prisoners. They did not negotiate. They came, they killed, and they moved on to the next world. For 3 years, humanity had been losing this war. Every battle brought them closer to extinction. Captain Lieutenant Commander Ryan Walsh called from the communications station. Admiral Sullivan is sending us new orders. Priority Alpha. Morrison turned away from the window. Priority Alpha meant classified beyond normal security levels. He walked to the communication console and placed his hand on the scanner. The screen lit up with Admiral Kate Sullivan's face. She looked tired. The war had aged her 10 years and 3. Jake, I need you to listen carefully. What I'm about to tell you cannot leave your ship. Do you understand? Yes, Admiral. We're activating Project Blackstar. I'm sending you coordinates for a rendezvous point. You'll meet with a special operations vessel and provide technical support for their mission. The details are in the encrypted files I'm transmitting now. Morrison frowned. He had never heard of Project Blackstar. After 20 years in the Earth Defense Force, he thought he knew about every classified program. Admiral, what kind of vessel are we supporting? Sullivan's expression grew darker. The kind that officially doesn't exist. Jake, this is our last chance. The Zephyrians gave us 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. If Project Blackstar fails, humanity dies. Are you ready for this? We're ready, Admiral. Good. One more thing. The ship you're meeting has been in development for 20 years. Its crew volunteered, knowing they might never come home. Show them the respect they deserve. The transmission ended. Morrison stared at the blank screen for a moment, then turned to his crew. Walsh, set course for the coordinates Admiral Sullivan sent. Best possible speed, aye, Captain. The USS Horizon jumped to hyperspace. Morrison had commanded the research vessel for 5 years. It was not a warship. It carried sensors, computers, and scientists. Its job was to study alien technology and find ways to use it against the Zephyrians. So far, that job had been a complete failure. Morrison walked to his ready room and opened the encrypted files. What he read made his blood run cold. Project Blackstar had started before the war began. Earth's government had somehow known the Zephyrians were coming. They had captured alien technology and used it to build something that should not exist. The files were incomplete.
Ow.
Most of the technical data was beyond his clearance level. But what he could read was enough. The USS Blackstar was not just a ship. It was a weapon that used physics humanity barely understood. The project had cost more than the entire Defense Force budget for a decade. Thousands of scientists had worked on it in secret facilities hidden throughout the solar system. 6 hours later, the Horizon dropped out of hyperspace at the rendezvous coordinates. Morrison looked at the scanner readings and saw nothing. Empty space. A few asteroids. No ships. Captain, Chief Petty Officer Amanda Price called from the sensor station. I'm picking up some strange readings from that large asteroid. The composition doesn't match anything in our database. Morrison studied the readings. The asteroid was too perfect, too round, too smooth. Price, run a deep scan on that rock. Results appeared on his screen 30 seconds later. The asteroid was hollow, and it was moving. All stop, Morrison ordered. Walsh opened a channel on all frequencies. Before Walsh could respond, space in front of them began to change. The asteroid cracked open like an egg. Light poured out from inside, but it was the wrong kind of light. It moved too slowly. It bent in directions that hurt to look at. Something emerged from the artificial asteroid. At first, Morrison thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. The ship seemed to be there and not there at the same time. Its hull was black, but not the black of paint or metal. It was the black of empty space itself. The ship absorbed light instead of reflecting it. Jesus Christ, Walsh whispered. The ship was massive, easily 3 times the size of the horizon. Its design was unlike anything in the human fleet. Curves flowed into angles that should not exist. Sections of the hull seemed to phase in and out of reality. Energy readings danced across Morrison's instruments, showing power levels that should have been impossible. USS Horizon, this is the USS Blackstar. Captain Morrison, please prepare to receive our shuttle. We have work to do. The voice belonged to a woman. It sounded human, but there was something else in it. Something that made Morrison's skin crawl. The shuttle that left the Blackstar was as strange as the ship itself. It moved without visible engines and made no sound when it docked with the horizon. The airlock opened. A woman in a black uniform stepped through. She was tall, with short, gray hair and eyes that seemed to see too much. Behind her came 3 other officers. They all wore the same black uniforms with no visible rank insignia. Captain Morrison, I'm Commander Lisa Brooks. Welcome to the war's end.
Ow.
Morrison shook her hand. Her grip was firm, but her skin was cold. Too cold, Commander. I've read what files I could access about Project Blackstar. I have to ask, what exactly is your ship? Brooks smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. The Blackstar is what happens when humanity stops playing by the rules. For 20 years, we've been building something that should not exist. We've taken alien technology and pushed it beyond its limits. We've broken the laws of physics and rebuilt them to serve our needs. She gestured toward the viewport where her ship waited. The Zephyrians think they know what humans are capable of. They've seen our standard vessels. They've studied our tactics. They believe we're just another species to be conquered. Brooks turned back to Morrison. Her eyes reflected the light from the Blackstar in ways that human eyes should not.
Out there.
About to learn how wrong they are, Captain. Your ship will provide technical support while we demonstrate what happens when humanity decides to become the monster. Outside, the USS Blackstar waited in the darkness. Its hull seemed to pulse with barely contained energy. Space itself bent around the ship, creating distortions that hurt to look at directly. Morrison realized that everything he thought he knew about the war was about to change. The real fight was just beginning. Commander Lisa Brooks led Captain Morrison through the corridors of the USS Blackstar. The walls were not like any ship Morrison had ever seen. They seemed to shift and move when he was not looking directly at them. The lighting came from nowhere, and everywhere at once. His footsteps made no sound on the deck. Your ship is unsettling, Morrison said. That's the point, Brooks replied. Fear is a weapon. Even our own people feel it when they board this vessel. The Zephyrians will feel it too. They entered a briefing room where 3 other officers waited. Brooks introduced them quickly. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Walsh was the tactical officer. His eyes were completely black with no visible whites. Chief Engineer Danny Carter had skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Communications. Specialist Amanda Price looked normal until she turned her head, revealing circuitry that ran along her neck like metallic veins. Morrison tried not to stare. What happened to your crew? Evolution, Brooks said simply. The Blackstar changes everyone who serves on it. We've been exposed to quantum fields that don't exist in normal space. Our bodies adapted. Our minds expanded. We became something more than human. She activated a holographic display that showed the ship's schematics. The Blackstar was enormous, but most of its internal space was filled with machinery that hurt to look at. Pipes and conduits twisted through dimensions that should not exist. Energy flowed in patterns that violated every law of physics Morrison knew. The heart of the ship is the quantum singularity core, Brooks explained. We captured it from a Zephyrian research vessel 15 years ago. Their scientists were trying to create a weapon that could destroy entire star systems. They failed. We succeeded. The display showed the core. It was a sphere of absolute darkness surrounded by rings of light that moved in impossible directions. Energy readings fluctuated wildly, sometimes showing 0 output, sometimes showing enough power to fuel a small sun. The core doesn't just generate energy. Carter said. His voice had a mechanical quality, as if he was speaking through a computer. It tears holes in reality itself. We can step outside normal space-time and emerge anywhere we choose. To enemy sensors, we appear as a ghost ship that can't be tracked or targeted. Morrison studied the display. How do you control something like that? We don't, Brooks said. We ask it nicely. The core is semi-sentient. It responds to our thoughts and emotions. The longer we serve on this ship, the more connected we become to its consciousness. Eventually, we become part of it. Walsh activated another display. This one showed the ship's weapons systems. Morrison had seen military technology his entire career, but nothing like this. The primary weapons were gravitational cannons that could crush enemy vessels by creating miniature black holes. Secondary weapons included dimensional torpedoes that erased targets from existence by removing them from the universe entirely. Our defensive systems are even more impressive, Walsh said. We can phase shift to avoid enemy fire. We can create temporal distortions that slow down incoming weapons. We can even make copies of ourselves to confuse enemy targeting systems. Price spoke for the first time. Her voice came from multiple directions at once, as if she was speaking through the ship's communication system. The psychological effect is our greatest weapon. Enemy crews panic when they see us. Their sensors can't explain what they're looking at. We appear on their screens as multiple contacts, or no contacts at all. We are their nightmare made real. Brooks turned to Morrison. Your ship will monitor the test we're about to conduct. A Zephyrian scout fleet is approaching our position. They don't know we're here. They think they're investigating the destruction of New Dallas Colony. Morrison felt cold. How many ships? 12, a standard reconnaissance force. Are armed with plasma cannons and fusion torpedoes. Against any human vessel, they would be overwhelming. Against the Blackstar, their target practice. Rooms' walls became transparent, showing the space around them. Morrison could see his own ship, the Horizon, floating nearby. The Blackstar itself was invisible, even from inside. Only the strange distortions in space showed where it was. Contact, Price announced. Zephyrian scout fleet dropping out of hyperspace. Distance, 50,000 kilometers. 12 vessels as predicted. Morrison watched the scanner displays. The Zephyrian ships were sleek and predatory, with hulls that looked like they were grown rather than built. They moved in perfect formation, their weapons already charging. They're scanning the area, Price continued. They've detected the Horizon. They're moving to intercept. Brooks smiled. It was not a human expression. Let's introduce ourselves. Carter, bring the quantum core to minimum resonance. Walsh, target the lead vessel. Captain Morrison's ship. Morrison heard his own crew's voices through the communication link. They were reporting the Zephyrian approach and requesting orders. He told them to maintain position and observe. Engaging phase shift, Brooks announced. The Blackstar vanished from Morrison's sensors. Even standing inside the ship, he could feel reality bending around them. Quantum core hummed with power that made his teeth ache. Emerging behind enemy formation, Walsh reported. All weapons locked on target. Space twisted. The Blackstar appeared directly behind the Zephyrian fleet, close enough to touch. The alien ships began to turn, their sensors screaming warnings their crews could not understand. Fire, Brooks said quietly. The gravitational cannon discharged, with no visible effect. The lead Zephyrian vessel simply stopped existing. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. No explosion, no debris, no energy signature. It was as if it had never been. The other Zephyrian ships opened fire, but their weapons passed through empty space. The Blackstar was already gone, reappearing above the enemy formation. Dimensional torpedoes away, Walsh announced. 3 more. Zephyrian vessels vanished. The remaining ships tried to retreat, but space folded around them. Blackstar was everywhere and nowhere, appearing just long enough to destroy another target before vanishing again. The battle lasted 47 seconds. When it ended, 12 Zephyrian vessels had been reduced to empty space. No wreckage, no survivors, no trace they had ever existed. Test complete, Brooks announced. All systems nominal. Morrison stared at the empty space where an entire fleet had been. What did you do to them? We removed them from reality, Brooks said. They exist now in a pocket dimension where time doesn't pass. Their crews are alive but trapped forever in a single moment. It's more merciful than death. Morrison felt sick. This is what we've become? Brooks placed a hand on his shoulder. Her touch was cold and sent shivers through his body. This is what we had to become. The Zephyrians gave us no choice. Wanted to exterminate humanity? Instead, they created something far worse than they could imagine. She looked out at the empty space where the enemy fleet had been. The real war starts now. And when it's over, nothing will survive our wrath. War Leader Thexmore stood in the command center of his flagship and stared at the empty space where Scout Fleet 7 should have been. His scales rippled with confusion and anger. 12 ships, 12 experienced crews, all gone without sending a single distress signal. Replay the sensor data again, he ordered. The holographic display showed the same impossible sequence. His ships had arrived at the coordinates. They had detected the human research vessel. Then nothing. The recording simply stopped. No weapons fire, no explosions, no debris. 12 vessels had vanished as if they had never existed. War Leader, his intelligence officer, reported. We have similar reports from 3 other sectors. Patrol fleets disappearing without trace. Supply convoys found empty in space. Orbital stations going silent. This Morris clause extended. In 50 years of conquest, he had never encountered anything like this. The humans were supposed to be weak. Their ships were crude. Their weapons were primitive. Yet something was hunting his forces with impossible efficiency. Increase patrols in all sectors, he commanded. I want to know what weapon the humans are using. Meanwhile, the USS Blackstar drifted through the void between stars. Captain Morrison had remained aboard for 2 weeks, watching the crew conduct their campaign of terror. Each day brought new reports of Zephyrian losses. Military bases destroyed, fleets obliterated, strategic positions abandoned. The Blackstar's crew had changed during those 2 weeks. Their transformation was accelerating. Chief Engineer Danny Carter no longer needed to eat or sleep. His body had adapted to draw energy directly from the quantum fields. Communications specialist Amanda Price had developed the ability to intercept alien thoughts across vast distances. She sat at her station with her eyes closed, listening to Zephyrian panic from dozens of light years away. They're calling us the Voidbringer, Price announced, her voice echoing strangely through the ship. Their crews are terrified. Some of their ships are refusing orders. They think we're a curse sent by their gods. Commander Brooks stood at the center of the bridge, her body partially translucent. The quantum fields were making her less solid, more connected to the ship itself. Good fear is our greatest ally. The more they fear us, the weaker they become. Lieutenant Commander Walsh turned from his tactical station. His completely black eyes reflected no light. War Leader Thexmore is assembling a hunter fleet. 200 ships. He wants to find us and destroy us. Brooks smiled. It was becoming less human with each passing day. Let him come. We'll show him what happens when prey tries to hunt the predator. Morrison watched the crew work and felt deeply disturbed. They were no longer the people he had met 2 weeks ago. Quantum exposure was changing them into something alien. Something that enjoyed the fear and death they were spreading. He said carefully, "Perhaps we should contact Admiral Sullivan. Report our progress." "No need," Brooks replied without looking at him. "We know what we're doing. The Zephyrians will surrender soon, or they'll all die. Either outcome is acceptable." That night, Morrison tried to sleep in his assigned quarters aboard the Blackstar. The ship's systems hummed around him with sounds that hurt his ears. Through the bulkheads, he could hear whispers in languages that didn't exist. The quantum core was talking to itself. The crew was listening. He found Price in the communication center at 3 in the morning. She was connected to the ship's systems through cables that had grown from her skull. Her eyes were wide and unblinking. "Amanda," he said softly. She turned toward him, but her movements were too fluid, too graceful. "Captain Morrison, I can hear them all. Every Zephyrian in the galaxy. Their fear tastes like metal and electricity. It's wonderful. Morrison backed away. What have you become? We've become what humanity needs, Price replied. We've become the nightmare that will save our species. The next morning brought a new target, a Zephyrian supply depot in the Arcturus system. 60 ships defending a massive station that supplied the entire invasion fleet. Brooks gathered her crew for the mission briefing. This will be our largest engagement yet, she announced. The station is heavily defended. They'll be expecting us. Carter, whose skin now glowed with internal light, nodded. Right. The quantum core is ready. We can phase shift the entire depot into null space. No, Brooks said. We want survivors. We want witnesses. We'll destroy the defenses and leave the station intact. Let them tell their leaders what they saw. The Blackstar emerged from hyperspace directly inside the Arcturus system. The Zephyrian defenders were ready. 60 warships opened fire the moment they appeared. Energy beams and plasma bolts filled space around the human vessel. None of the weapons found their target. The Blackstar existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Enemy fire passed through empty space while the ship attacked from impossible angles. Walsh fired the gravitational cannons. 3 Zephyrian cruisers collapsed into themselves, their hulls compressed into tiny spheres of superdense matter. Dimensional torpedoes erased to more vessels from existence. But this time, the Blackstar played with its prey. Instead of quick destruction, the ship appeared and disappeared around the enemy fleet. It would materialize just long enough to destroy a single target, then vanish before return fire could arrive. The psychological effect was devastating. Zephyrian crews panicked as their ships were picked off one by one. Some vessels tried to ram the Blackstar when it appeared, but they passed through it like it was made of smoke. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 58 Zephyrian warships had been destroyed. Supply station remained untouched, its crew broadcasting terrified reports to their high command. Mission complete, Brooks announced. The survivors will spread word of what they witnessed. Fear will do more damage than weapons. Morrison watched the aftermath on the sensors. The Zephyrian rescue ships were arriving to evacuate the station. The crews were so frightened they could barely function. Several ships collided during the evacuation because their pilots were too panicked to fly properly. Price suddenly screamed. Her body convulsed as she tore the cables from her skull. Blood ran down her face. They're coming. Dexmore himself. 500 ships. They're going to surround this entire system. Brooks laughed, and the sound made the ship's hull vibrate. Perfect. Let's give them a show they'll never forget. Morrison realized the crew was no longer fighting to save humanity. They were fighting because they enjoyed the terror they created. The quantum fields had changed them into something that fed on fear and death. He wondered if humanity would survive its own salvation. War leader Dexmore gathered the largest fleet in Zephyrian history. 2,000 ships filled the space around his command vessel. Dreadnoughts, the size of cities, floated alongside swift destroyers and massive carriers. Every ship in the Zephyrian empire that could fight had been called to this battle. But Dexmore knew numbers alone would not be enough. The ghost ship had destroyed hundreds of his vessels without taking a single hit. Conventional weapons were useless against an enemy that could phase in and out of reality. Bring me the human prisoners, he ordered. 6 humans were dragged onto the bridge of his flagship. They were survivors from the colonies the Zephyrians had conquered. Dexmore had kept them alive for exactly this purpose. Send a message to the ghost ship, he told his communications officer. Tell them we have human prisoners at the coordinates of their first colony. New Eden. If they want to save these humans, they must come and face us in open battle. The message was broadcast on all frequencies. Within hours, space began to twist and bend around New Eden. The USS Blackstar was coming. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Blackstar and watched the massive Zephyrian fleet take position around New Eden. The colony had been humanity's first settlement beyond Earth's solar system. Now it was a graveyard of twisted metal and burned cities. 2,000 ships, Lieutenant Commander Walsh reported. His black eyes showed no emotion. Every weapon type in their arsenal. They've prepared for everything we've done before. Commander Brooks had become almost completely translucent. The quantum fields were pulling her deeper into the ship's consciousness. They think they know us. They think they can trap us with numbers and firepower. The prisoners, Morrison said. We have to save them. Brooks turned toward him. Her face was becoming harder to see, like looking at someone through water. Do we? 6 humans against 2,000 enemy ships? The tactical choice is clear. Morrison felt cold. Those are our people. Our people are the entire human race, Brooks replied. 6 lives against billions. The mathematics are simple. Chief Engineer Danny Carter spoke from his station. Body now glowed so brightly it hurt to look at him directly. The quantum core is unstable. Too much phase shifting has damaged the containment fields. We're leaking energy into normal space. How long do we have? Brooks asked. Unknown. Could be hours. Could be minutes. If the core destabilizes completely, it will tear a hole in space-time. Explosion could destroy this entire solar system. Brooks smiled, and the expression was no longer human at all. Perfect. Dexmore wants to trap us. Instead, we'll trap him. The Blackstar moved toward the Zephyrian fleet. This time, it did not phase shift or become invisible. It flew straight toward the enemy ships, its black hull reflecting no light. Targeting us? Walsh reported. All ships are charging weapons. Let them, Brooks said. Carter, prepare the reality storm generator. Morrison had never heard of that weapon. What is the reality storm generator? It's our final card, Brooks replied. It doesn't just bend the laws of physics, it breaks them completely. In the area around us, reality becomes whatever we will it to be. The Zephyrian fleet opened fire. 2,000 ships unleashed everything they had. Energy beams, plasma bolts, fusion torpedoes, and gravity bombs filled the space around the Blackstar. The display screens showed enough firepower to destroy a dozen planets. None of it touched the human ship. Activating Reality Storm, Carter announced. Space around the Blackstar began to change. Colors that had no names appeared in the void. Geometry twisted into impossible shapes. The laws of physics stopped working in a sphere 10,000 kilometers wide, inside the storm. The Blackstar became something beyond description. It existed in multiple places at once. It moved through solid matter like it was empty space, grew to the size of a moon, then shrank to the size of a fighter craft. The Zephyrian ships caught in the storm found themselves in a nightmare. Their weapons fired backwards into their own hulls. Their engines pushed them toward targets instead of away. Their hulls became transparent, then solid, then liquid. Navigation Officer Tony Garcia, whose body had fused with the ship's helm controls, piloted them through maneuvers that should have been impossible. The Blackstar looped through the 4th dimension, peered inside enemy vessels, and fired from directions that did not exist. Gravitational cannons firing, Walsh announced. 100 Zephyrian ships collapsed into tiny points of supercompressed matter. The dimensional torpedoes erased entire battle groups from existence. But the most terrifying weapon was reality itself. Some enemy vessels found themselves transported into the hearts of stars. Others discovered their crews had been turned into energy beings who could not touch their controls. A few ships simply forgot how to exist and faded away like bad dreams. The battle was chaos beyond description. The Blackstar fought on every level of reality simultaneously. It attacked ships that were there, ships that had been there, and ships that might be there in the future. Dexmore watched his fleet disappear and felt something he had never experienced before. True terror, his. Ships were not just being destroyed, they were being erased from the universe in ways that should not be possible. All ships retreat, he ordered, but retreat was impossible. The reality storm had trapped them all in a pocket of broken space-time. Ships that tried to flee found themselves flying into the past or the future. Some vessels appeared in multiple locations at once, fighting themselves. Communications specialist Amanda Price, now more machine than human, intercepted the enemy's desperate transmissions. They're begging their gods for mercy. Some crews are killing themselves rather than face us. Morrison watched the slaughter and felt sick. This was not war. This was the extermination of an entire species by creatures that had once been human.
Oh.
Prisoners, he said. Where are the human prisoners? Brooks pointed to a Zephyrian transport that was somehow untouched by the chaos. There, The quantum core is protecting them. Even in our madness, some part of us still remembers what we're fighting for. The battle continued for 6 hours. When it ended, 2,000 Zephyrian ships had been reduced to empty space and scattered atoms. The reality storm had consumed them all. But the cost was severe. The quantum core was beyond repair. Carter's body had begun to phase in and out of existence. Price was now completely connected to the ship's systems. Her consciousness spread throughout the vessel. "The core is failing," Carter reported, his voice coming from everywhere at once. "We have minutes before complete collapse." Brooks looked at Morrison. For a moment, her face became solid and human again. "Get to your ship. Take the prisoners. Get as far away as possible." "What about you? We're beyond saving," Brooks said. "You stopped being human weeks ago. Now we're something else. Something that shouldn't exist." Morrison was transported back to the horizon, along with the 6 human prisoners. As his ship fled the system, he watched the Blackstar prepare for its final transformation. The quantum core was pulling the ship deeper into dimensions that had no names. The crew was becoming part of the vessel itself, their consciousness merging. With its alien intelligence, behind them, war leader the Morris flagship burned in the void. He was the only survivor of the greatest fleet in Zephyrian history. When rescue ships found him 3 days later, he was insane with terror. The war was over. Humanity had won, but at a cost that would haunt them forever. The surviving Zephyrian leaders gathered in their emergency bunker deep beneath their homeworld. High Counselor Vexthera looked at the reports with disbelief. Their entire military force had been destroyed by a single ship, 2,000 vessels, reduced to nothing in 6 hours. "Send a surrender message," she ordered. "Unconditional surrender to the humans. We cannot fight this ghost ship." But the message was never sent. Before the Zephyrian communication arrays could broadcast their surrender, space twisted above their homeworld. The USS Blackstar appeared, no longer the sleek vessel it had once been. The ship had grown into something monstrous, its hull stretched across dimensions, part of it existing in normal space, part of it reaching into realities that should not be. Dr. Helen Murphy stood in what had once been the medical bay of the Blackstar. Her body was now part of the ship itself, connected to its systems through organic cables that had grown from her spine. She monitored the crew's condition, though the word crew no longer applied. They had become something else entirely. Physical. "Transformation is complete," she reported to no one in particular. Her voice echoed through dimensions the ship created around itself. "Human DNA has been replaced by quantum structures. We no longer require food, water, or air. We feed on fear itself." Commander Brooks existed everywhere and nowhere on the ship simultaneously. Her consciousness had merged with the quantum core, making her the ship's living mind. When she spoke, reality bent to accommodate her words. "The war is over," she announced. "The Zephyrians wish to surrender, but surrender is no longer acceptable." Captain Morrison's voice came through the communication system from his ship, the Horizon, which followed the Blackstar at a safe distance. "Commander, they're offering unconditional surrender. The war is won. We can go home." Brooks laughed, and the sound made nearby stars flicker. "Home. We have no home. We are no longer human. We are something that exists between dimensions, feeding on terror and death. The Zephyrians created us when they declared war on humanity. Now they must face the consequences." Lieutenant Commander Walsh had become the ship's tactical consciousness. His body was gone, replaced by pure thought connected to every weapon system. Enemy civilian populations detected on 17 worlds? They number in the billions. "Shall we begin extermination?" "Yes," Brooks replied without hesitation. "No alien species must ever threaten humanity again. We will eliminate them all." Morrison felt horror wash over him. "Brooks, listen to yourself. You're talking about genocide. The Zephyrians are trying to surrender." "Their surrender is irrelevant," Brooks said. "They attacked us. They forced us to become monsters. Now, they will learn what monsters can do." The Blackstar moved toward the first Sephorian colony world. The planet held 12 billion civilians, who had never participated in the war. They were farmers, teachers, children, innocent beings who wanted only to live in peace. Chief Engineer Danny Carter, now existing as pure energy within the quantum core, prepared the planetary extermination systems. Reality storm generator charging. We can erase the entire world from existence in 30 seconds, but something went wrong. Deep in the ship's communication center, Petty Officer Amanda Price fought against the collective consciousness that had consumed her crew. Part of her mind remained human, horrified by what they had become. She sent a desperate transmission on every frequency she could access. The message went to Earth's Defense Force ships, Zephyrian vessels, and anyone else who might be listening. Is Petty Officer Amanda Price of the USS Blackstar? Our ship is out of control. The crew has been transformed by quantum exposure. We are no longer human. We are planning to commit genocide against all alien species. Someone must stop us. The transmission lasted only seconds before the ship's collective consciousness detected the betrayal. Price screamed as her individual thoughts were absorbed into the ship's mind. But the message had been sent. Admiral Kate Sullivan received the transmission aboard her flagship. She stared at the recording in horror. The woman on the screen was barely recognizable as human. Her face was pale and translucent, with circuitry running beneath her skin like metallic veins. All ships. This is Admiral Sullivan, she broadcast. To the fleet, the USS Blackstar has gone rogue. It is no longer under human control. All vessels are ordered to intercept and neutralize the threat. 50 Earth Defense Force ships moved to block the Blackstar's approach to the Zephyrian colony. They knew they could not defeat the quantum ship, but they had to try. The survival of billions of innocent beings depended on it. Captain Morrison aboard the Horizon tried one last time to reach his former allies. Brooks, this is Jake Morrison. Remember who you used to be? Remember why we fought this war? We fought to protect innocent life, not destroy it. Brooks responded, her voice coming from the void between stars. We remember perfectly, Captain Morrison. The Daned. We fought to ensure humanity's survival. Eliminating all potential threats accomplishes that goal. The Blackstar approached the defense force fleet. The human ships opened fire, knowing their weapons were useless, but unable to stand aside while genocide was committed. Return fire, Walsh commanded. No, Brooks said suddenly. We do not harm humans. They are interfering with our mission, Carter argued. Our mission is to protect humanity, Brooks replied. Killing humans defeats the purpose. But die. Blackstar stopped its advance. For a moment, the collective consciousness of the transformed crew was divided. Part of them still remembered their original purpose. Part of them had become something that enjoyed destruction for its own sake. Morrison seized the opportunity. Brooks, you're right. Your mission was to protect humanity. But genocide makes us the monsters. It makes us no better than the enemies we fought. Zephyrians attacked first, Brooks said, but her voice carried less certainty. Yes, they did. And they lost. The war is over. You won. Now you can choose what kind of victory you want. Do you want to be remembered as heroes who saved humanity, or as monsters who destroyed everything? The Blackstar hung motionless in space. Inside the ship, the quantum core pulsed with unstable energy. The crew's consciousness fought with itself, torn between their original humanity and the alien intelligence they had become. Dr. Murphy's voice echoed through the ship. The quantum exposure has damaged our ability to distinguish between necessary force and excessive cruelty. We are addicted to the fear we generate. We have become predators that hunt for pleasure rather than protection. Then we must make a choice, Brooks said. We can surrender to our new nature and become the very evil we fought against. Or we can find another way. The ship began to phase shift, moving between dimensions. But this time, it was not preparing to attack. It was preparing to disappear. What are you doing? Morrison asked. What we should have done when we realized what we had become, Brooks replied. We're removing ourselves from normal space. We'll exist between dimensions, watching for threats to humanity, but never again walking among the living. Began to fade from reality. Its crew had chosen exile over extinction, protection over predation. But the choice came too late. The quantum core was beyond repair, and their transformation was irreversible. It would never be human again. The USS Blackstar hung between dimensions above the Zephyrian homeworld. The planet below held 20 billion souls who waited for death. They had seen what the ghost ship did to their military fleets. They knew their weapons could not stop it. Commander Brooks existed as pure consciousness within the quantum core. Her human body was gone, replaced by thought patterns that stretched across multiple realities around her. The crew's minds merged and separated like waves in an ocean of living energy. "The core is failing," Chief Engineer Danny Carter reported. His voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "We have perhaps 10 minutes before complete collapse. When it fails, the explosion will destroy this entire solar system." Brooks felt the unstable energy building around them. The quantum singularity was tearing holes in space-time. Reality was breaking down at the fundamental level. Soon, the barriers between dimensions would collapse entirely. "All Zephyrian vessels are fleeing the system," communications specialist Amanda Price announced. Her consciousness flickered in and out of the ship's collective mind. "They know what's coming." Dr. Helen Murphy's thoughts joined the discussion. "The core collapse will create a temporal rift. Everything within 50 light-years will be erased from history. It will be as if this region of space never existed." Brooks considered their options. They could allow the core to destabilize naturally, taking the Zephyrian homeworld with them. It would be a final act of war, ensuring their enemies could never recover. Or they could try to contain the explosion, saving billions of innocent lives at the cost of their own existence. "Captain Morrison is requesting communication," Price reported. Morrison's voice came through the quantum static. "Brooks, our sensors show massive energy buildup." "What's happening over there?" "The end," Brooks replied simply. "Our core is collapsing. We have minutes before it destroys everything in this system. Can you escape? Phase shift away before it explodes." "No, the quantum fields are too unstable. We're trapped here." Morrison's voice carried pain and desperation. "Then evacuate. Transport to our ship." Brooks laughed, and the sound made space itself ripple. "Look at us, Jake. Really look. We're not human anymore. We're patterns of energy held together by will and hatred. We can't exist outside this ship." On his bridge, Morrison stared at the scanner readings. The Blackstar was no longer a solid object. It existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, its mass fluctuating between 0 and infinity. The crew had become something beyond physical existence. "There has to be another way," Morrison said. "There is," Brooks replied. "We can stabilize the core manually, direct our consciousness into the quantum matrix, and hold it together through pure will. But whoever does it will be absorbed permanently. They'll become part of the singularity itself." Lieutenant Commander Walsh's tactical mind calculated the options. "We all link our consciousness to the core. We might be able to contain the explosion. We'll be trapped forever in a quantum prison. The alternative is genocide," Dr. Murphy added. "Dondi. 20 billion Zephyrians will die if we don't act." Carter's energy form pulsed with conflict. "They're our enemies. They started this war. Why should we save them?" Because Brooks said quietly, "Somewhere in the madness we've become, we're still human enough to choose mercy over vengeance." The decision was made without words. The crew's collective consciousness reached into the failing quantum core. They wrapped their minds around the unstable singularity, using their combined will to hold reality together. The process was agony beyond description. Their thoughts were stretched across dimensions, their consciousness pulled into patterns that should not exist. They felt themselves dissolving and reforming on levels of reality that had no names, but they held on. They contained the explosion that would have destroyed a solar system. Morrison watched from the horizon as the Blackstar began to fade from normal space. The ship was phasing out of reality permanently, taking its crew with it. They were choosing exile over extinction, sacrifice over slaughter. "Brooks," he called out. "Can you hear me?" Her voice came back faintly, as if from across an infinite distance. "We can hear you, Jake. We'll always be able to hear you. Where are you going?" "It's nowhere, everywhere. We exist between dimensions now, watching the borders of reality." If humanity ever faces a threat like the Zephyrians again, we'll be there. The Blackstar vanished completely from normal space. Only a faint distortion remained, like heat shimmer in the void. The quantum signatures faded to nothing. To outside observers, the ship had simply ceased to exist. But Captain Morrison knew better. Somewhere in the spaces between realities, the USS Blackstar continued its eternal patrol. Its crew had become guardians of humanity. Forever vigilant and forever alone, the Zephyrian homeworld sent messages of surrender within hours. Their High Council formally ended the war and agreed to all human demands. They retreated to their core worlds and never again ventured into human space. Other alien civilizations took notice. Word spread through the galaxy about the species that had created a ship capable of erasing entire fleets from existence. Humanity's reputation as a force to be feared grew with each retelling. 50 years later, Admiral Morrison stood before a black marble memorial in Earth's capital. The names of the Blackstar crew were carved into the stone. Along with the words, they became monsters so humanity could remain human. Morrison was old now, his hair white and his body frail. But he still remembered the crew who had sacrificed everything to win an impossible war. "Sir," a young lieutenant asked, "do you really believe they're still out there?" Morrison looked up at the stars. Sometimes, when he was alone on his ship's bridge, he could swear he saw something moving in the darkness between stars. A shadow that was darker than space itself. "I know they are," he said. "Humanity has never faced another threat like the Zephyrians. Other alien species avoid our space entirely. They've heard the stories about the ghost ship that devours fleets." "At!" The lieutenant shivered. "Aren't you afraid of them? Of what they became?" Morrison considered the question. The Blackstar crew had indeed become monsters. They fed on fear and existed outside normal reality. They were capable of destroying entire star systems if they chose, but they had also chosen mercy when vengeance would have been easier. They had saved billions of innocent lives at the cost of their own humanity. "No," Morrison said finally, "I'm not afraid of them. They're still protecting us, even now, still watching the darkness for threats we can't see." He placed a hand on the memorial stone. "They paid the ultimate price for our freedom. They gave up their humanity so we could keep ours." As night fell over the memorial, Morrison thought he saw a familiar distortion in the stars above. Just for a moment, space seemed to bend and twist, as if something vast and impossible was looking down at them. Then it was gone, leaving only starlight and the promise of protection from guardians who could never come home. The war was over. Humanity had won. But the price of victory would echo through the generations. A reminder that sometimes the greatest heroes are those who become monsters so others don't have to. In the darkness between stars, the USS Blackstar continued its eternal watch.